I was 18 years old when my father threw me out of the house with nothing but the clothes on my back and $200 he shoved into my hand like it was charity. My name is Rachel Morrison, and for 12 years I believed my family hated me for something I didn't do. 12 years of silence, of building a life from nothing, of carrying the weight of false accusations that destroyed everything I thought I knew about love and family. But the truth always comes out eventually, and when it did, it shattered my father so completely that I almost felt sorry for him. Almost? Let me take you back to the beginning, to the night everything fell apart. It was June of 2012, 3 weeks after my high school graduation. I'd been accepted to State University on a partial scholarship, planning to study nursing. My mom had died from cancer when I was 14, and it had just been me, my dad Richard, and my younger sister Vanessa ever since. Vanessa was 16 then, beautiful and charming, and absolutely everyone's favorite. She had this way of lighting up a room, of making people feel special when she paid attention to them. I loved her desperately, the way you love someone you've protected and cared for your whole life. Dad worked as a regional manager for a manufacturing company, made decent money, enough to keep us comfortable in our suburban home. After Mom died, he'd become stricter, more concerned with reputation and appearances. He was involved in our church, sat on the community board, coached Little League. His image mattered to him, maybe too much. Vanessa and I had different ways of coping with Mom's death. I threw myself into school and volunteering, tried to be the responsible older sister who never caused problems. Vanessa became wilder, more rebellious, though she was careful to hide it from Dad. I knew she was sneaking out at night, knew she was drinking with her friends, dating guys Dad would never approve of. But she was grieving, and I thought she just needed time to work through it. I covered for her sometimes, told Dad she was sleeping when she was actually climbing out her bedroom window. I thought I was being a good sister, protecting her the way Mom would have wanted me to. I had no idea she'd eventually use that loyalty to destroy me. The night it happened, Dad was hosting a dinner party. Some important clients from work, people from church, neighbors he wanted to impress. He'd been planning it for weeks, had the house cleaned professionally, hired a caterer, bought expensive wine. Vanessa and I were expected to be on our best behavior, to play the role of the perfect grieving family that had overcome tragedy with grace and faith. I wore the dress Dad picked out, helped set up, smiled at strangers who told me how mature I was for my age. Vanessa seemed off that evening. She was quiet, kept disappearing to her room, wouldn't make eye contact with me. I asked if she was okay, and she just shrugged, said she had a headache. I offered to get her some aspirin, but she waved me off. I should have pushed harder, should have recognized the signs that something was wrong, but I was distracted by the party, by trying to help Dad impress people who ultimately didn't matter. Around 9 o'clock, one of Dad's colleagues went upstairs to use the bathroom. I was in the kitchen helping clear dessert plates when I heard shouting from the second floor. Everyone went quiet. That horrible silence when you know something bad is happening, but you don't know what yet. Dad rushed upstairs and I followed, my heart already pounding with dread. The colleague, a man named Mr. Peterson, was standing in the hallway looking horrified. Dad's bedroom door was open, and inside we could see Vanessa, passed out on Dad's bed, surrounded by empty beer bottles and Dad's expensive whiskey. His laptop was open next to her, displaying pornographic images. His wallet was on the nightstand, empty, cash scattered across the floor. And worst of all, his gun safe was open, the small pistol he kept for protection sitting on the dresser. Dad's face went purple. He started shaking, his hands clenched into fists. He woke Vanessa up roughly, and she acted disoriented, confused, looked at all of us with wide, innocent eyes, and started crying. "What happened?" she kept saying. "Where am I?" Dad demanded to know what she'd done, and she just cried harder, saying she didn't remember anything. Said the last thing she remembered was me offering her a drink earlier in the evening. That's when she looked at me, her eyes meeting mine, and I saw something flicker there, something calculated and cold. "Rachel gave me something," she said, her voice small and scared. She said it would help with my headache, but then everything got fuzzy. I didn't understand what was happening. Why was she lying? Why was she looking at me like I was a stranger? Dad turned to me, and I've never seen such rage in another human being. What did you give her? He demanded. I tried to explain that I hadn't given her anything, that I'd only offered to get aspirin from downstairs. But Vanessa kept crying, kept insisting I'd handed her a drink, that she'd trusted me because I was her sister. She was so convincing, tears streaming down her face, her whole body shaking. The guests were all staring at me with disgust and horror. Mr. Peterson said we should call the police, that drugging someone was a serious crime. Dad told everyone to leave, ushered them out with apologies and promises that he'd handle it. When the house was empty, he dragged me into his office and screamed at me for an hour, called me things I'd never heard him say, asked how I could do this to my own sister, to our family, after everything we'd been through. I kept trying to defend myself, to explain that Vanessa was lying, but he wouldn't listen. He went to Vanessa's room, and I could hear them talking through the walls. Heard her sobbing story about how I'd been jealous of her, how I'd been acting strange lately, how she'd found pills in my room that she didn't recognize. Pills I'd apparently been taking, that I'd apparently used to drug her. None of it was true, but Dad believed every word. When he came back to the office, his eyes were red, but his jaw was set with determination. "You're 18 now," he said, "an adult. I don't know what's happened to you, what you've become, but I won't have it in my house. You need to leave." I begged him to listen, to check Vanessa's story, to look at her phone or talk to her friends. But he was done listening. He went to his safe, pulled out cash, handed it to me. "This is more than you deserve," he said. "Take your clothes and go. Don't contact Vanessa. Don't come back here. As far as I'm concerned, I have one daughter now." I packed a duffel bag with shaking hands, grabbed my laptop and phone charger, my high school diploma. Vanessa watched from her doorway as I carried my stuff downstairs. I stopped in front of her, searched her face for some sign of remorse or explanation. "Why?" I whispered. "Why are you doing this?" She just looked at me with this blank expression and closed her door. Dad drove me to a motel on the edge of town, paid for 3 nights, and left without saying goodbye. I sat on that stained bedspread in that musty room and tried to understand what had just happened. My sister had framed me for drugging her, had destroyed our father's trust in me completely, had gotten me kicked out of my home, and I had no idea why. I called my best friend Amy the next morning, told her everything. She was horrified, offered to let me stay with her family, but her parents were going through their own issues and didn't have space for a long-term guest. I contacted my Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, but Dad had already called her with his version of events. She told me she was disappointed in me, that she'd always thought I was the good one, and hung up before I could explain. The scholarship to State University required a parental contribution I no longer had access to. When I called the financial aid office and explained my situation, leaving out the specific accusations, they said I need documentation of being disowned or emancipated, legal proof that my father was no longer supporting me. But getting that paperwork took time and money I didn't have. I missed the enrollment deadline while trying to figure it out, lost my spot, lost the scholarship, lost the future I'd been planning. I took the $200 Dad had given me and stretched it as far as possible. Stayed at the cheapest motels, ate ramen and gas station sandwiches, applied to every job I could find. Most places wouldn't hire me without an address or a reference. I couldn't use Dad, couldn't risk potential employers calling him and hearing his version of who I was. Finally, a diner on the highway took pity on me. The owner, a woman named Marie who was maybe 60 with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, hired me to wait tables. Marie let me crash in the storage room above the diner for the first few weeks, until I saved enough for a deposit on a studio apartment. It was basically a closet with a hot plate and a bathroom in the worst part of town, but it was mine. I worked double shifts at the diner, saved every penny I could. Amy visited sometimes, brought me updates about Vanessa. "Your sister's telling everyone you had a drug problem," Amy said. "That your dad tried to get you help, but you refused. People are saying he's a saint for putting up with you as long as he did. I wanted to scream, to post the truth all over social media, to force people to hear my side. But I had no proof. It was Vanessa's word against mine, and she was the victim in her story, the sweet 16-year-old who'd been betrayed by her jealous older sister. Anything I said would just make me look defensive and guilty. So I stayed silent, worked my shifts, built my new life in the shadows of the old one. My coworker at the diner, a guy named Marcus, became my first real friend in that new life. He was 23, working his way through community college, dealing with his own family drama. We bonded over late-night shifts and the shared experience of being on our own too young. Marcus was the one who convinced me to enroll at community college. "You're too smart to wait tables forever," he said. "Get your basics done here, transfer somewhere later. Start over." I took his advice, used my diner wages to pay for classes, 1 or 2 per semester, whatever I could afford. It was slow going, taking me twice as long as it should have, but I was moving forward. I studied in the diner during slow periods, did homework in my tiny apartment, refused to let my sister's lies define my future. If anything, the anger fueled me. Every time I wanted to quit, I thought about Vanessa living in Dad's house, probably going to college on his dime, being the perfect daughter, while I struggled. It made me work harder. 2 years after Dad kicked me out, Amy called with news. Vanessa had gotten into State University, the school I'd been supposed to attend, was studying psychology of all things. Living in the dorms Dad was paying for, joining a sorority, living the life that should have been mine. Amy said Vanessa asked about me sometimes, wondered where I was. "Yeah, right," I said. "She knows exactly where I am, exactly what she did to me." But Amy said something that stuck with me. "I think she regrets it," Amy said. "Sometimes she gets this look when your name comes up, like she's carrying something heavy. Maybe you should reach out." I laughed bitterly. Reach out to the person who ruined my life. Never going to happen. Amy sighed but didn't push it. She stayed my friend through everything, even when it would have been easier to believe Vanessa's version and cut me off. I'll never forget that loyalty. I dated a little bit during those years, nothing serious. Trust was hard when the person you trusted most in the world had betrayed you so completely. Marcus and I hooked up a few times, but decided we were better as friends. I focused on school and work, on building something stable. Got promoted to shift supervisor at the diner, got a slightly better apartment, bought a used car that broke down constantly but was mine. Small victories that felt monumental given where I'd started. My community college advisor, Dr. Sarah Chen, took an interest in my story. I'd written an essay for her class about overcoming adversity, had carefully avoided the specific details, but conveyed enough that she recognized trauma when she saw it. She called me into her office one afternoon and asked what my goals were. I told her about wanting to be a nurse, about the scholarship I'd lost, about starting over. She nodded thoughtfully and told me about a program that helped non-traditional students transfer to 4-year universities with financial aid packages designed for people in my situation. Dr. Chen worked with me for months, helping me apply, writing recommendations, vouching for my character and potential. When I got accepted to City University with a full scholarship including housing, I cried in her office. She hugged me and said she was proud of me, that I'd earned this despite everything working against me. It was the first time since Mom died that an adult had told me they were proud of me. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear it until the words broke something open inside me. City University was 3 hours away from my hometown, far enough that I didn't have to worry about running into Dad or Vanessa. I sold most of my stuff, quit the diner though Marie threw me a going-away party that made me cry again, and moved into the dorms at 22 years old surrounded by 18-year-old freshmen. It was awkward, but I didn't care. I was finally getting my education, finally moving toward the future I'd always wanted. Nursing school was brutal. The coursework was intense, the clinical rotations exhausting, the pressure constant. But I thrived on it. Every exam I passed, every skill I mastered, felt like proof that Vanessa hadn't destroyed me, that I could build something meaningful from the wreckage she'd created. My classmates became my new family. People like Jennifer and David and Keisha who knew nothing about my past and accepted me for who I was in the present. I graduated with my nursing degree when I was 26, 4 years later than I should have, but right on time for the life I was actually living. Got hired at City General Hospital in the emergency department. The work was chaotic and demanding, and I loved every second of it. Loved helping people on the worst days of their lives. Loved the adrenaline and the purpose. My first paycheck as an RN felt like vindication. I'd made it despite everything. Around that same time, I started seeing someone seriously. His name was Alex. He was a physician assistant in the ER, and he was patient with my trust issues in a way I didn't know was possible. I told him everything on our 5th date, the whole story about Vanessa and Dad and being kicked out. Expected him to run, to decide I was too damaged and complicated. Instead, he just held my hand and said that what happened to me was wrong, that my family had failed me, and that he was glad I'd survived it. Alex and I got engaged 2 years later. Nothing fancy, just him asking me in our apartment after a long shift, both of us exhausted and happy. We planned a small wedding, just close friends. No family on my side because I didn't have family anymore. His parents were lovely, welcomed me warmly, never pushed me to reconcile with my father or sister. They understood that some betrayals can't be forgiven with apologies and time. I was 29 years old, living a good life I'd built entirely on my own, when I got the Facebook friend request. Vanessa Morrison wants to be your friend. I stared at that notification for an hour, my stomach churning. Part of me wanted to accept it, wanted to see what she'd say after 11 years of silence. The bigger part wanted to delete it and pretend she didn't exist. I accepted it. I don't know why. Curiosity maybe, or some pathetic hope that she'd finally tell me why. Her profile was full of photos that made me feel sick. Vanessa graduating from State University. Vanessa in a white coat, apparently she'd gone to medical school. Vanessa with Dad, both of them smiling, looking happy and whole. There were no photos of me, no acknowledgement that I existed. Our mother's memory honored in posts and tributes that excluded me entirely. I was the family secret, the daughter and sister who'd been erased. Vanessa sent me a message 3 days after I accepted the friend request. Hey Rachel, I know this is weird after so long. I just wanted to reach out, see how you're doing. Hope you're well. It was so casual, so normal, like she hadn't destroyed my entire life. Like we were old friends catching up instead of sisters torn apart by her lies. I didn't respond. What could I possibly say that wouldn't sound bitter and broken? She messaged again a week later. I really would like to talk if you're open to it. I understand if you're not ready. Just know that I think about you. I wanted to reply with rage and accusations, but instead I blocked her. I wasn't ready to face whatever she wanted to say. Wasn't ready to open that wound when I'd finally gotten to a place of peace. Alex supported my decision, said I didn't owe her anything, that protecting my mental health came first. 6 months later, Amy called me. I hadn't heard from her in a while. We drifted apart after I moved away, but we still checked in occasionally. Rachel, she said, her voice tight. I need to tell you something about Vanessa. My whole body went cold. What happened? Amy took a breath. She's in rehab. Apparently she's had a drug problem for years, kept it hidden. She had a breakdown, tried to hurt herself, and your dad finally got her help. But Rachel, she's telling people things about that night. Things that don't match what she said back then. I felt dizzy, had to sit down. What kind of things? Amy hesitated. She's saying she lied, that she framed you, that she's carried the guilt for over a decade and it's been destroying her. Apparently it all came out in therapy and now she wants to make amends or whatever. Your dad knows the truth now. He's devastated. I couldn't speak, couldn't process what I was hearing. Vanessa had admitted it. After 11 years, she'd finally told the truth. Amy continued. She wants to contact you, wants to apologize. Your dad does too. He's been trying to find you, but you've kept yourself pretty hidden. I told Amy I needed time to think, to decide how I felt about any of this. She understood, said to call if I needed anything. I hung up and just sat there, feeling too many things at once. Relief that I'd been vindicated. Rage that it had taken 11 years. grief for everything I'd lost that could never be recovered. Alex came home and found me crying on the couch. I told him what Amy had said, and he held me while I fell apart. He didn't try to tell me what to do, didn't offer easy answers, just gave me space to feel everything. Over the next few days, we talked through my options. I could ignore them, pretend the confession never happened, continue living my life without them in it. Or I could engage, hear what they had to say, decide if there was any path forward. Neither option felt right. I compromised. I sent Dad an email. It was the first contact we'd had in 11 years. I kept it brief, factual. Amy told me about Vanessa's confession. I'm open to hearing what you have to say, but I'm not ready for phone calls or in-person meetings. If you want to explain yourself, write to me. Give me something I can process on my own terms. I included my email address and hit send before I could second-guess myself. His response came 2 days later. It was long, rambling, full of apologies and justifications and grief. He wrote about how he'd believed Vanessa because she was younger, more vulnerable, because the evidence that night had been so damning, how he'd thought he was protecting her from a sister who'd lost her way, how he'd spent 11 years believing I was troubled and dangerous, telling himself he'd made the right choice, even though it destroyed him. How Vanessa's confession had shattered everything he thought he knew about his daughters and himself. He wrote about trying to find me over the years, hiring private investigators who came up empty because I'd been careful about my digital footprint, about how he'd kept my bedroom the same for the first 5 years, hoping I'd come home before finally accepting that I was gone, about the guilt that had haunted him, the wondering if he'd been too harsh, if there was more to the story. He'd pushed those doubts down, committed to his version of events because reconsidering meant admitting he'd made an unforgivable mistake. The email ended with a plea. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I failed you in the worst possible way. But you're my daughter, Rachel. I love you. I've always loved you even when I thought you'd hurt your sister. Please let me try to make this right. Please give me a chance to be your father again. I don't expect you to forget what happened, but I'm begging you to let me try to earn your trust back. Whatever you need, whatever it takes, I'll do it. I read that email 50 times over the next week. Showed it to Alex, to my therapist, to Jennifer from nursing school who'd become one of my closest friends. Everyone had opinions. Alex thought I should do whatever felt right for me without pressure. My therapist encouraged me to process my feelings before making decisions. Jennifer was angrier on my behalf than I was, said Dad didn't deserve a second chance after what he'd done. They were all right, they were all wrong. Nothing felt clear. Vanessa sent her own email a few days later. Amy must have given her my address. Her message was different from Dad's, more raw and less defensive. Rachel, I don't know how to start this up to say I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry for what I did to you. I was 16 and stupid and selfish, and I destroyed your life because I was scared. That night, I'd snuck out to a party, got drunk, stole money from Dad for drugs. I knew I was going to get caught. And when I saw Dad's clients upstairs, when I realized how much trouble I was in, I panicked. You were always the responsible one, the one everyone trusted. I thought if I made you look bad, it would take the focus off me. I didn't think Dad would kick you out. I swear I didn't think it would go that far. She wrote about how the guilt had eaten at her for years, how she'd tried to convince herself she'd done the right thing, that I probably would have been fine, that I'd land on my feet. But she'd known the truth, known she'd ruined me and been too cowardly to admit it. The guilt had driven her to drugs, to therapy, to eventually a breakdown that forced everything into the light. I know sorry isn't enough, she wrote. I know nothing I say can give you back what I took, but I need you to know that I think about what I did every single day, that I hate myself for it, that if I could go back and change it, I would. You deserved so much better. From me, from Dad, from everyone. I understand if you never want to speak to me again, but I had to at least try to tell you the truth. I didn't respond to either email immediately. Took a month to sit with my feelings, to work through everything in therapy, to figure out what I actually wanted. The truth was complicated. Part of me wanted to tell them both to go to hell, that they didn't get to ask for forgiveness after destroying me. Part of me was curious about who they'd become, whether Vanessa had really changed or if this was just another manipulation. Part of me missed my family desperately, mourned the relationships we should have had all these years. Finally, I wrote back to Dad first. Your email explains why you did what you did, but it doesn't excuse it. You chose to believe the worst of me without question. You didn't investigate, didn't give me a chance to defend myself, didn't even consider that Vanessa might be lying. You threw me away like garbage and told me I was dead to you. I was 18 years old, and I spent the next 11 years building a life from nothing, while you got to be comfortable in your home with your remaining daughter. I survived despite you, not because of you. I don't know if I can forgive that. I don't know if I want to. But I continued writing. I'm open to supervised contact. If you want to meet me, it will be in a public place, with my fiancé present for a limited time. You don't get unlimited access to my life after abandoning me. You don't get to play father again without earning it. If you can accept those terms, we can talk. If not, this conversation is over. I sent it before I could overthink it, then wrote a similar message to Vanessa with even stricter boundaries. I was willing to hear them out, but I was protecting myself first. Dad agreed immediately. Vanessa took longer to respond, seemed surprised that I was even willing to consider meeting her. We set a date for 3 weeks later, giving me time to prepare mentally. The meeting would be at a coffee shop near my apartment with Alex there as support. 1 hour maximum. If I felt uncomfortable at any point, I could leave without explanation. Those were my terms and they both accepted. The weeks leading up to the meeting were hell. I had nightmares about that night again, dreams where I was 18 and Dad was screaming at me while Vanessa watched with cold eyes. Woke up crying more than once, Alex holding me until I could breathe normally again. My therapist helped me prepare scripts for what I wanted to say, helped me set mental boundaries around how much emotion I'd allow myself to show. I didn't want to cry in front of them, didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing how much they'd hurt me. The day arrived and I almost canceled 5 times. Alex drove me to the coffee shop, held my hand the whole way, reminded me that I was strong and capable, and I'd already survived the worst they could do to me. We got there early, picked a table in the back, where I could see the door. When Dad walked in, I barely recognized him. He'd aged dramatically, hair mostly gray now, face lined with stress and guilt. He looked small somehow, diminished, not the imposing figure who'd thrown me out all those years ago. Vanessa came in behind him, and the resemblance to Mom hit me like a punch. She had Mom's eyes, her bone structure. But there was a brittleness to her that hadn't been there before. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept well in years. They spotted us and Dad's face crumpled. He started crying before he even reached the table, tears streaming down his face as he looked at me like I was a ghost he'd never expected to see again. We sat down and the silence was excruciating. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice shaking. "Rachel, you look so much like your mother." I realized with a start that he'd missed my entire 20s. Missed me growing from a teenager into an adult. Missed everything because of one terrible night and the lies that followed. He reached across the table. He wanted to hold my hand, but stopped when he saw me flinch. "I'm so sorry," he said. "I'm so incredibly sorry for what I did to you." Vanessa was quieter, her eyes red but no tears falling yet. She looked at Alex, who had his arm protectively around my shoulders, then back at me. "You're engaged," she said softly. I nodded, didn't elaborate. Vanessa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm glad you found someone. Glad you're happy. You deserve that." The words sounded genuine, but I couldn't let myself believe them. Not yet. She'd been a convincing liar before. I told them I'd read their emails, that I appreciated the apologies, but words weren't enough. I needed to understand why Vanessa had chosen to frame me instead of just taking responsibility for her own actions. Why Dad had been so quick to believe the worst. Why neither of them had ever questioned the narrative, even when years passed and I never tried to contact them. They owed me explanations, real ones, not just vague apologies about being sorry and making mistakes. Vanessa went first. Her hands were shaking as she spoke, picking at a napkin on the table. "I was so scared that night," she said. "I'd been out with my boyfriend Travis. You remember him? The guy Dad hated. We'd gone to a party. I'd gotten way too drunk. Tried cocaine for the first time. Travis had given me Dad's wallet to hold, said he needed me to keep it safe while he dealt with something. I was too messed up to question why he had Dad's wallet. Later, I found out he'd stolen it earlier that day when he came over, planning to use the credit cards." She continued, the words tumbling out like she'd been holding them in for years. "When I got home, I realized I still had the wallet. Realized Dad would notice it was missing. I panicked, tried to think of a way out. Then I remembered how you'd cover for me before, how you always protected me. And I thought if I could make it look like you'd done something worse, maybe I'd get away with what I'd actually done. So I staged the scene, took bottles from Dad's liquor cabinet, opened his laptop to porn sites, got his gun out of the safe using the code I'd figured out months before. Made it look crazy and suspicious. I felt sick hearing this. She'd planned it. Hadn't been some panicked mistake, but a calculated decision to throw me under the bus. And the drugging accusation. I asked, my voice cold. Vanessa looked down at her hands. That was improvised, she admitted. When Dad woke me up and everyone was staring, I knew I needed something big. Something that would make you look dangerous and take all the attention off what I'd actually done. I'm sorry, Rachel. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm so sorry. Dad was crying harder now, his shoulders shaking. I believed her, he said. God help me, I believed every word. She was so convincing and the evidence was right there. I never thought my 16-year-old daughter would be capable of that kind of manipulation. Never thought she'd destroy her own sister to save herself. I failed you both. Failed you by kicking you out, failed Vanessa by not seeing how troubled she was. I should have questioned more, investigated more. Should have trusted you. You'd never given me reason not to. I asked him why he never tried to find me after. Why he just accepted that I was gone and moved on with his life. He shook his head. I did try. He insisted. Hired 3 different private investigators over the years. But you'd covered your tracks well. Changed your phone number, used your middle name sometimes, stayed off social media for the first few years. They'd find traces of you, then lose the trail. And part of me thought, maybe you didn't want to be found, that you'd started a new life, and I had no right to intrude after what I'd done. Vanessa interjected. I told him not to look, she admitted. Told him you probably hated us and forcing contact would just make things worse. I convinced him to stop searching after the second investigator came up empty. I was protecting myself, making sure the truth stayed buried. Every year that passed made it easier to pretend it never happened. Easier to be the only daughter, to let you be forgotten. I'm a terrible person, Rachel. I know that now. We sat in silence for a while, me processing everything they'd said, them waiting for me to respond. Alex squeezed my shoulder, a silent reminder that I didn't have to say or do anything I didn't want to. Finally, I spoke. You took 11 years from me, I said. 11 years where I had no family, no support, had to build everything alone. I worked as a waitress to put myself through community college. Lived in places that weren't safe because they were all I could afford. Missed my mother's grave because I couldn't risk going back to town and running into you. You took my innocence and my trust and my belief that family meant something. How am I supposed to just forgive that? Dad started to respond, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. You want forgiveness? You want to be in my life again? Then you need to understand that it's on my terms. I'm not the 18-year-old girl you kicked out. I'm a 30-year-old woman with a career and a fiancé and a life that doesn't include you. If we have any relationship going forward, it's because I choose it, not because you've decided you're ready to be a father again. And Vanessa, I don't know if I can ever trust you. You looked me in the eye and lied so convincingly that you destroyed everything. How do I know this isn't another manipulation? Vanessa nodded, tears finally falling. You don't, she said. You have no reason to trust me, and I accept that. All I can do is show you through my actions that I've changed. I'm in therapy 3 times a week. working on my addiction and my tendency to manipulate. I'm taking accountability for all the harm I've caused. But if you decide you never want to see me again, I understand. You don't owe me forgiveness. You don't owe me anything. The hour passed quickly, and when it was time to leave, I felt emotionally exhausted. We agreed to take things slowly, to keep communicating through email for now, to maybe meet again in a few months if I felt ready. No promises, no commitments. Just the possibility of slowly rebuilding something that had been completely destroyed. Dad asked if he could hug me, and I said no, not yet, maybe someday. He accepted that with more tears. Alex and I left the coffee shop, and I cried the entire drive home. Cried for the girl I'd been at 18, scared and alone. Cried for the years I'd lost. Cried for the complicated mess of feelings I had toward my father and sister. But also cried with relief that the truth was finally out, that I wasn't crazy, that they knew what they'd done to me. Alex just drove and held my hand and reminded me that I was brave for even showing up. Over the next few months, Dad and I exchanged emails regularly. He told me about his life, about work and retirement plans, and how he'd struggled with depression after learning the truth. Told me about keeping my room preserved for years, about finally packing it up and crying over every item, about how he told extended family what really happened, how horrified they'd been. My Aunt Linda had apparently cried and called me immediately, but I didn't answer. Wasn't ready for more apologies from people who'd abandoned me. Vanessa's emails were different. She sent me her therapy homework sometimes, assignments where she had to write about the harm she'd caused and the patterns she was working to change. Told me about rehab, about how hard sobriety was, about facing herself without substances to numb the guilt. She never pushed for more contact, never demanded forgiveness. Just kept showing up in my inbox with honesty about her struggles and accountability for her choices. I invited them to the wedding. Alex and I had planned a small ceremony, just 50 people, and I agonized over whether to include Dad and Vanessa. Alex said it was completely my choice, that he'd support whatever I decided. In the end, I sent them invitations with a note. You're invited to witness this moment, but I need you to understand that this doesn't mean everything is fixed. This is a beginning, not an ending. They both RSVP'd yes immediately. The wedding was beautiful. My friends from nursing school, my colleagues from the hospital, Alex's huge family who'd embraced me completely. And in the back, looking uncomfortable but present, were Dad and Vanessa. I'd asked them not to sit in the family section, had given those seats to Marie from the diner and Dr. Chen from community college, the women who'd actually functioned as family when I needed it. Dad accepted that without complaint, just seemed grateful to be there at all. During the reception, Dad approached me carefully. "You look beautiful," he said. "Your mother would be so proud of the woman you've become." I felt that complicated surge of grief and anger and longing. Mom would have been proud that I survived, I told him. But she'd be heartbroken about how I had to. He nodded, accepting the rebuke. "Can I have this dance?" he asked when the father-daughter dance was announced. I'd planned to dance with Alex's father, who'd been kind to me from the start, but looking at Dad's hopeful, broken expression, I found myself saying yes. We danced in silence for a while. Then Dad spoke quietly. "I know I can never make up for what I took from you, never give you back those years or the trust I destroyed. But I want you to know that I'm proud of you too. Proud of how you survived, how you built a life, how strong you became even though I failed you completely. You didn't become this person because of me. You became this person despite me. And that's a testament to who you've always been." I didn't respond, just let him hold me while we swayed to the music. When the song ended, I stepped back and he returned to his table without expecting more. Vanessa caught my eye from across the room, raised her glass in a small toast. I didn't return it, but I didn't look away either. Progress, maybe, or at least the possibility of it. Now, a year later, I'm still figuring out what relationship I want with my father and sister. We meet occasionally, always in controlled settings, always with boundaries firmly in place. Dad's in therapy too, working through his guilt and his failure as a parent. He started volunteering with organizations that help homeless youth, trying to give back in ways he never gave to me when I needed it. Vanessa finished her medical residency, works in addiction medicine, uses her own story to help patients who struggle with substance abuse. They're both trying to be better people, to earn redemption they may never fully achieve. I'm pregnant now, 3 months along, and the question of grandparent relationships looms large. Alex and I have talked extensively about what role, if any, Dad and Vanessa will play in our child's life. We've decided on supervised visits, boundaries around storytelling, making sure our kid knows the truth about what happened. That grandpa made a terrible mistake, and we're working through it. That Aunt Vanessa hurt me deeply and is trying to make amends. That family is complicated, and forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Sometimes I'm angry all over again, furious at what they took from me. Other times I'm just sad about the years we lost. The relationship we could have had if Vanessa hadn't been so selfish and Dad hadn't been so quick to judge. But mostly I'm grateful for the life I built without them, for Alex and Marie and Dr. Chen, and all the people who became my chosen family, for the strength I developed through surviving the worst, for knowing I can depend on myself no matter what happens. Dad reads every update I send about the pregnancy with wonder and gratitude he doesn't try to hide. Vanessa sent me a baby blanket she knitted herself, a skill she apparently learned in rehab. They're both trying, in their imperfect ways, to be present for this new chapter. Whether that's enough remains to be seen. But I'm no longer the powerless 18-year-old they betrayed. I'm the one with control now, the one who decides if and how they're part of my life. And that shift in power, that reclamation of my own story, means everything. The truth did come out 12 years late. My father did break down when he realized what he'd done, what he'd believed. My sister did confess to the lies that destroyed our family. But the vindication didn't heal everything, didn't give me back the years I spent alone, didn't erase the trauma of being thrown away by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. It just gave me a choice about what happens next. And I'm still deciding, day by day, what that choice will be.